A short 10-minute ferry ride from downtown Toronto lies a unique place known as Toronto Island. For well over 200 years, the island has been a place to live, to visit, to explore nature, and to renew both body and spirit. An archipelago of 15 islands, now connected by roads and bridges, the island is also home to one of Toronto's oldest residential communities. Today, there are 262 homes and about 700 residents who live on Wards and Algonquin Islands. They are all that remain of a much bigger community that was largely destroyed in the 1950s and 60s. Toronto Island formed thousands of years ago as sand eroded from the Scarborough Bluffs was gradually deposited into a sandbar. For perhaps 10,000 years, First Nations peoples used the island for fishing and hunting and as a sacred place for healing and rejuvenation. In 1793, Toronto, then known as York, was founded where it is because of the large protected bay formed by Toronto Island. The island was originally a peninsula, but a massive storm in 1858 created a deep channel that completely cut it off from the mainland. The island has always provided an escape from Toronto's heat and humidity. By the end of the 19th century, there were many summer residents, a few who lived year-round, and thousands of visitors to Hanlan's Point, Centre Island, and Wards Island. To meet the increase in demand, the Toronto Ferry Service began running regular ferries. By the early 1900s, Hanlan's Point was the summer destination for Torontonians. There was a huge amusement park on Hanlan's and a large stadium for lacrosse and baseball, where Babe Ruth hit his first professional home run. Hanlan's Point was named after John Hanlan, who built the impressive Hanlan's Hotel in 1880. His son Ned Hanlan, the world champion sculler, grew up on the island and raced on its famous regatta course. Jimmy Jones is an island resident who also grew up in the Hanlan's community. His parents worked as clowns and ran a hot dog stand at the amusement park. Jimmy's house was one of many that were removed to make way for the construction of the island airport, Toronto's first, in the 1930s. Wards Island was first settled in the 1830s by fishermen, among them David Ward, after whom the island is named. His son William Ward owned the Wards Hotel, built in 1882. In the wake of a tragic boating accident that claimed the lives of his 5 sisters, William Ward devoted the rest of his life to rescue. The summer colony on Wards Island continued to grow, and in 1916, the city laid out the streets just as you see them today, lined in those days with tents. This was the famous Tent City on Wards Island. In the 1930s, the city gave Wards residents permission to replace their tents with permanent cottages. Chris Gay, who lived in her family's tent in the 30s, still lives in the very home that replaced their tent. Some homes were built from Simpsons kits. You can still find some of these homes with their distinguishing gable roofs on both Wards and Algonquin Islands. Today, half of the community lives on Algonquin Island. In the 1930s, to make way for the airport development, 31 houses were floated from Hanlan's Point and placed around the perimeter of Algonquin, while houses on the interior were added to address the housing crisis after World War II. Meanwhile, by the 1940s, Center Island was a bustling commercial area that catered to both visitors and residents. The main drag had hotels, restaurants, a theater, clothing stores, and all kinds of shops that you would find in a small town. Many of Toronto's leading citizens built fabulous homes on Center Island. By the mid-1940s, there were 10,000 summer residents on the island and 2,000 who lived there year-round. The island had its own school and 2 churches. Dances, pageants, sports, and social activities became part of a unique island culture. For those who knew it in those days, it was Toronto Island's golden age. But all that began to change in 1953 when the new Metro Toronto government assumed ownership of the island. Metro decreed that the island would be one big park. In 1956, it began to raise island homes on Hanlan's Point and Center Island. The houses were itemized and then, one by one, torn down. By the mid-1960s, Metro had demolished some 450 homes. Devastated, some who lost their homes moved to Wards or Algonquin. Metro bureaucrats were determined to remove those homes too. Under the threat of eviction, Toronto Island residents banded together to fight the Metro government. Their slogan was "Save Island Homes." Many borough politicians characterized the community as rich, malingering hippies and squatters. But the Islanders were not alone. They had many supporters in the city. And on a critical day, in July 1980, hundreds of Islanders and those supporters gathered at the bridge to stop the sheriff from handing out eviction notices. That battle was won, but the war lasted until 1993, when the provincial government finally passed land trust legislation which gave island residents a 99-year lease. The trust comes with rules. It requires year-round residency, house prices are strictly controlled, and residents cannot sell their houses to anyone except back to the land trust. The system is designed to ensure that owners cannot earn windfall profits and that housing on the island remains affordable. Today, the lives of our 700 community residents are dictated by the ferry schedule and other transportation issues. Toronto Island is one of the largest urban car-free communities in North America, and only service vehicles are allowed. Therefore, almost everything, groceries, furniture, building materials, has to be hauled from the city in a myriad of inventive island-style contraptions. There are no banks, ATMs, or stores, just a bridge boutique where neighbors exchange goods. We have postal service, garbage pickup, and library service. And we pay the same municipal taxes as everyone else in Toronto. Kids from the island and from the city attend the Island Public School until grade 6. And there is a Montessori school for preschoolers in the Algonquin Island Clubhouse. The community includes many artists, writers, dancers, and musicians. And there are several island-based theater groups. The beauty of Toronto Island is evident in all seasons. Summers are lovely. But winters can be tough, especially when the ferry struggles to get through ice in the bay. Winter is also a special time for the community, achingly beautiful, with a different playground. The struggle to keep our homes and living on an island has created a unique community. As residents of Toronto Island, we feel privileged to be stewards of this parkland.